All right. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Gods and Goddesses in Training. It is Uncle Makara, All Relations. Today we're doing an incredible breakdown on the Liver King, who just got arrested very recently after threatening Joe Rogan and a few others. And I just wanted to give my perspective on this, guys. Without further ado, I'm going to first and foremost share the link with the tribe so everybody's alerted. Let's see here. Thank you for your patience. It's interesting how he had that like primal lifestyle thing and we're like Primal Sutra. So it directly informs us of what's really going on, in a various way. Last night, by the way, I dropped some bars, as you guys saw. That was an influence from my spirit guides. It was very, very powerful. So here we go, guys. We're back. Let's tap in. Let's see who's here. All right. And let's get started today. So I just want to give a little bit of a disclaimer before I really dive in. Everything that's shared here on this video is absolutely educational, spiritual, and for entertainment purposes only. This is a metaphysical analysis based on publicly available information and symbolic interpretation. So I'm not claiming to know the private intentions, the mental health, or the spiritual state of any individual, including the Liver King. Okay? So no harm, defamation, or accusations are intended, only a deeper exploration of how modern archetypes intersect with psychology, energy, and public narrative. And if you're somehow watching this or hearing this, Brian, blessings to you on your healing path, bro. This is all coming from love, from one warrior to another. Before I get started on this, I want to point something out. Why the Matrix specifically targets people in pop culture. Okay? The celebrities that you admire, what if they aren't eccentric as they seem, but they're energetically compromised? As we move deeper into the eon of disclosure, the veils between the dimensions are thinning. And what's being exposed is very simple. Fame is a ritual. Music is a frequency weapon, right? Trauma is a perfect portal. From Ariana Grande's encounters with demonic faces in Hellgate cemeteries to Cardi B admitting her music activates old demons to Post Malone touching a cursed Jewish, Dybbuk box and spiraling into panic nightmares. These aren't just isolated stories. These are case studies in spiritual fragmentation. Some open the door through trauma and fear, others through vanity and rituals masked as art. Most never close the door, though. Whether it's Ozzy Osbourne saying he's been possessed for decades or Taylor Swift performing literal Wiccan memory-altering rituals on stage, we're seeing a pattern. When power is divorced from purity and desire isn't anchored in devotion, the archetype becomes a vessel for distortion. Okay? And what about the audience? As you're watching this person, you're participating, because every time you consume energy laced with oppression, over-sexualization, occult glamour, dark frequencies, you're being invited into energetic agreements. And most don't even realize this. So what do? We're not here to judge. We're not here to fear. We're just here to discern. We're just here to discern. So clean your temple, strengthen your field, walk with your higher self, and if needed, cut the contracts. Okay, we help you do this at primalsutramysteryschool.com if you need our assistance. However, because in this realm, you either broadcast your essence or you get hijacked by algorithms, right? So this world that we're living in right now, it's spiritual and synthetic alike, okay? Okay. Hey there, babe. What's up? So, in the beginning, Liver King embodied a very clear, focused archetype, right, guys? He was known as kind of this ancestral savage, really buff, swole guy. His energy was quite cohesive. His values were pretty lit, right? Sun, soil, sleep, raw organs, maybe. Okay, a little bit weird, but still, it's still aligned, okay? Eating raw meat, yeah, it's been done, okay? But he just popularized it in the modern mainstream, right? But in recent months, what I've been noticing and seeing is sort of this kind of fragmentation, these erratic speech patterns, kind of disorganized thought, and also identity dilution. So if you notice, one of his energies is that he's preaching ancestral virtue, and the next moment he's mumbling like a parody of himself. So that identity distortion is like a classic sign of entity infiltration, especially in public figures who work with primal energies, without proper grounding or inner purification. So I miss you, babe. According to the Hermetic and yogic systems, the ego is like a gateway. So if it's not regularly integrated through self-inquiry, it becomes porous. So public adoration, steroid use, trauma repression, this creates a perfect storm, right? A leaking aura, amplified lower chakras, unintegrated shadow equals open invitation for parasitic entities. So in esoteric terms, a lie, especially one told repeatedly, publicly, and with conviction, splits the psyche. Okay? You guys who have watched the movie Split, it splits the psyche. It creates a false identity that must be constantly fed, maintained, and defended. And he honestly looks exhausted. I'll show you guys a picture. But every time Liver King repeated, "I'm natural," he wasn't just fooling the audience, he was creating a counterfeit astral shell, right? A mask that drew energy away from his true self. So this kind of disconnect, it creates like a vacuum, right? And entities feed on that vacuum. So lying about steroid use, about being natural, while knowing the truth inside, causes a shame, causes a guilt, causes an identity confusion, and a split mind. So that energetic dissonance between who he is and who he pretends to be creates the perfect soil for possession, self-betrayal. That lie didn't just hurt his brand, it opened a rift in his soul contract. Okay? And of course, this is all my perspectives. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't get so wrapped up in what I'm saying. This is all I'm just speaking from my heart mind coherence right now. Okay? Let's talk about steroids. Okay? This isn't just about, testosterone levels. Synthetic steroids push the body into unnatural hormonal extremes, and then that creates shockwaves in the endocrine system, which our subtle body relies on for our own stability. So when your endocrine system is hijacked, then your aura also becomes volatile, too bright in some places, like the root and the sacral chakra, and too dim in the higher chakras. the heart chakra, the third eye. So this overstimulation short circuits the personality, right? It creates space for external thought forms, egregores, or entities to ride that wave. Here's a personal anecdote. Several occult practitioners and people who practice this art form I've spoken to share that certain substances, not just psychedelics, but also anabolic steroids, can leave energetic burn marks on the subtle body. So these actually will attract very hungry astral beings who mirror the user's dominant, unresolved desire. So in Liver King's case, it was power, validation, dominance. So Liver King didn't just build a brand, right? Ryan says, nah, overstimulation to the max. Yeah. So he didn't just build a brand, right, guys? He conjured a collective entity. When millions of men start projecting admiration, insecurity, desire, and rage towards a single person or an archetype, the egregore is formed. A thought being made of the mass emotional charge. So this Liver King egregore is fed by the algorithm in bro culture, and it's constantly growing powerful. It demands attention. And often it becomes this, this very, to feed on the creator itself, right? So the performer becomes the puppet type of thing. This is very common in occult history, like magicians create servitors or egregores for power, and then later they get consumed by them. Okay? Tibetan yogis still, warned of this as they even worked with wrathful beings, right? So what's happening to Liver King may be very similar, right? The primal king became possessed by the very beast that he summoned, unfortunately, right? The next thing I would say is a disconnection from the higher self. So this kind of manic energy, the lack of stillness, are all signs of heart and soul connection has been frayed. So that means true primal living actually means rootedness, stillness, clarity, deep alignment with the earth's wisdom. But what we see now is primal chaos. It's not exactly primal wisdom, is it? There's still no center in his storm, no soul presence behind the eyes. He has an overcharged root chakra, survival aggression, underdeveloped crown, intuition and surrender, and a severed bridge, which his heart chakra is completely blocked. So a being operating like this is not integrated. He's channeling something that may have started off as very ambitious. I'm going to do something great, but now it's autonomous. So this isn't about just one spirit hijacking in a man. It's cultural, astral, and internal. It's the perfect storm of shadow, cultural projection, biochemical distortion, and egregoric overload all at once. So this creates a kind of semi-autonomous entity which rides the body of the person who summoned it and devours them from within. And unless that person humbles themselves, detoxes spiritually and physically, returns to ritual integration, they become the host, the mask, the possessed. Okay? So what started out as a meme has now turned into a public unraveling. But this isn't about performance-enhancing drugs or bad PR or, social media burnout. This is more a textbook case of spiritual possession in the modern age. Camouflage behind all of these things, right? Unchecked masculine archetypes, maybe algorithm addiction, and a fuck ton of protein powder, okay? So recently, in this month, I think even a few days ago, right? He was arrested. He was reportedly arrested in Texas after a series of manic threatening videos aimed at Joe Rogan, Derek from Plates and More Dates, and a few others as well. And he showed up in Rogan's hometown with a bizarre Hitman-style box, right, containing what appeared to be props, and possibly weapons. His speech was disjointed, paranoid, and obsessive, fixated on making people pay. I have to make him pay, right? This is not a publicity stunt. This is a man who's spiraling into his archetypal possession. Okay? So the question is, why did he pick Joe Rogan? Why Joe Rogan, right? Does anybody have any ideas? Who's watching in the live? Because Rogan represents everything Liver King wanted to be seen as, but never could fully embody. So first, Rogan is he's like a tribal firekeeper of modern man, right? He's rational, he's quite respected, he's spoken to a lot of guests from all around the world. He's primal, but also poetic, strong, but also intellectually curious. He embodies the alpha male archetype without screaming it into people's faces. And of course, he has his flaws, right? He's not perfect either, but Liver King, on the other hand, had to manufacture dominance. So the subconscious envy becomes unbearable, bro, right? Whatever Joe Rogan has is the antidote to the entity that possesses the Liver King. Oh, shit. That's a great perspective, brother. I like that. Yep. So Rogan's publicly called out Liver King's steroid deception after the More Plates, More Dates special, right? That wasn't just criticism, it was an ego death blow. For a man possessed by his image, that kind of public truth isn't a job. It's a sword to the identity. So Rogan is the gatekeeper of mass credibility in the health and wellness world. Getting rejected or mocked by Rogan is like being banished from Olympus, bro, right? It's like being banished from Olympus. When you've built your whole brand on primal virtue and you get laughed at by the village chief, your internal narrative fractures. I've been there, okay? Finally, and perhaps most esoterically, Rogan represents the embodied logos, the voice of the collective discernment, because he's spoken to so many different people. He now has many different perspectives that he can perceive from. In the spiritual plane, when someone's ego is too inflated and a possession entity takes hold, that entity will often project its war onto the symbolic guardians of truth. Just like Ryan is saying, right? So Rogan isn't just a podcaster in this drama. He's a mirror Liver King's spirit couldn't handle. And so the wounded, hijacked psyche turned him into a target. Let me show you a picture, okay, when he got arrested. This will kind of help. Let's do a whiteboard. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here, okay? Look at his eyes, right? Right, guys? Just perceive his eyes. If you can really tell, this man has his soul under siege. There's a tension. There's like a man who's between two worlds. Notice how his eyes are different. One is darker, one is lighter. It's showing that he's split between two selves, the performer self and the prisoner who's trapped inside. And you can see the exhaustion in his gaze. Yeah, sure, I could find a picture from 2 or more years ago. Let's see, 2 years back. Okay, let's see if this works. Yep. Are we getting this now, guys? Right? Look at the eyes here, okay? And look at the eyes here. Okay? So, what I was saying is like it's like the bot so you see exhaustion in the gaze, but also a flicker of untamed willpower, right? Like the body's been hijacked, but something primal still refuses to break inside of him. And that's not just the wear and tear of the flesh, it's the burden of carrying an archetype that may no longer serve him, or worse, one that's begun to consume him, right? So possession doesn't always look like a demon crawling out of a head. Sometimes it looks like a person so inflated in their own myth that the ego shatters and something else steps in to fill the cracks, right? So the Liver King didn't just build a brand, he built an egregore, the psychic entity from the collective worship, all the attention that he got from millions who love to follow him, mock him, meme his persona. So these energetic structures gains autonomy. If the original creator doesn't stay centered through spiritual hygiene, it backfires. Okay? So what once served him now feeds on him. He's not channeling primal energy anymore. He's being consumed by the very caricature of primal energy. And guys, steroids don't just mess with hormones, they also destabilize the chakra nadi network, right? So the energetic circuitry of the body. So overstimulated root and solar plexus and sacral creates this kind of bloated survival drive and this dominant seeking loop without the balance from the heart and the third eye. Okay? And you will notice his manic language too. His syntax is collapsing. He loops thoughts, he rambles names and threats, right? He mumbles cosmic significance onto mundane beefs. That's not a mental health deterioration happening. It's also a throat chakra override. So in Vedic terms, what happens is when the Visuddhi or the Visuddha chakra, the throat chakra, gets overridden by a false will, an egoic solar plexus, without his sattvic intelligence. And in Western mysticism, you would say this is a mercurial hijack. It's a mercurial hijack, right? When thought form entities begin channeling through your voice or mercury, speech, communication. So something is speaking through him. We don't know what it is. I can probably test for what it is for the adepts later, if they're interested. However, understand that he was the mythic archetype of the barbarian, right? He called himself a barbarian, guys. He said barbarian is a rite of passage, but he never integrated his inner king. So the barbarian became ungoverned, right? A brute without soul. He's saying, bro, what the fuck? Totally different. Dude on the left looks like a jolly motherfucker. It's likely he's being consumed, right image. I see significantly less life force. That's right. That's right. So what had happened, this is my perspective, is that in archetypal psychology, this is the shadow of the warrior. When he loses the priest or the sage within, he becomes a berserker. And there's no elder in his psyche, no inner temple in his psyche. It's just noise, rage, muscle, hunger, right? So this opens the door to this kind of psycho-spiritual hijack that amplifies existing wounds and hunger for the chaos. So showing up at, Rogan City with a box, ranting about making people pay, that's not just social collab. That's a culmination of unconscious ritualization. When a person performs without knowing, the climax of an ego death myth. His psyche summoned a fall because the false god had to be sacrificed. So from the spiritual perspective, it wasn't just an arrest. This was an initiatory breaking, and now I think honestly he's fully taken over by this being. However, he still has some level of control. If you notice, right, there's still a little bit of light or shine in his eyes. However, it's become dim, right? And maybe it's also the lighting here, right? But you will notice specifically there's like this kind of draconic type of split in the middle of his eyes, which right here he doesn't seem to have that, right? These seem like cat eyes. This seems like dragon eyes, right? You see these two lines? One, two, right? So what I'm sensing is, yes, an egregore entity is probably formed inside of him by the mass attention and the masculine insecurity, and then that feeds on it, right? Feeds on it, feeds on it, feeds on the hormonal imbalance, delusional self-image, and the shadow archetype of the wounded barbarian, right? And quite possibly a conscious higher force correction setting up for either awakening or total fragmentation, right? And so if you're building a persona, working with primal forces, or becoming a public archetype, let this be a warning for you. Power untempered by humility becomes a portal. I saw a great talk on Rumble with Russell Brand and Terrence Howard. Very interesting conversation, because Russell Brand is now into Christ and his teachings, and Terrence Howard still has that kind of metaphysical take on spirituality. It's great to see these two minds go back and forth on this stuff. Very interesting. Okay. See if you guys can check that out. Next is Liver King became a myth, but forgot to remain the man. Of course, he's a man, right? However, how can he heal right now? That's the real question, right? What is it that Brian Johnson needs to heal right now? Silence and solitude. He needs to step away from all this cameras, audiences, algorithms, ego-feeding loops. No performance, no uploads, just no talking, just stillness. Without that, he'll never hear his soul's voice beneath the entity's noise. Second, I would recommend a purification of body and aura. That means full detox, right? Maybe from his PEDs or synthetic enhancements, trying to go more natural, and also deep somatic trauma release, especially ideally in nature. So his nervous system is so hijacked, and his body is still feeding the parasite energetically. Third would be a humility through service, giving back. He's got to do something that doesn't just benefit him and his primal community. He's got to do something that benefits humanity at a whole, at a large. That breaks the spell of narcissistic enchantment. It awakens and reconstructs the heart. So for now, for the rest, how to dismantle the egregore, cut the etheric cords, rebuild the psychic shield, reinitiate his true archetype, that would require more so private guided work with someone like me or someone similar to what I do, which is I'm a healer. And because not all wounds are visible and not all enemies live outside the mind, guys. Okay. So this was my breakdown of Liver King. I hope you guys enjoyed this little take. And right now, I just want to see if you guys have any questions or what's coming up from this, and then we can end it. Okay. Brian Johnson, right? You see him joking around with Logan Paul years ago on his Impulsive podcast, right? Eating bull testicles or whatever he did, right? Seemed like a cool guy, right? Really energizing. And of course, all of these things are very, very relevant, like being in the sun, lifting heavy, eating meat. These are great things. I'm not saying that these are negative things. These are absolutely fantastic things. But too much of raw meat, I don't know about that one, but that aside, you know what I mean? Raw eggs is still okay. I think too much risk of, I don't know, certain bacteria, I think, in raw meat, undercooked meat, and so forth. So could it be from the raw meat too? No, I'm guessing not. It's probably just the entity. Regardless, good live. Gotta go. Okay, shout out Primal Sutra. All right, cool. Peace, guys. Thank you so much for tapping in. I hope you enjoy this. Have an incredible rest of your day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. We got this. You got this. Upward Spiral Gang. Brian, hey, if you need our help, we are Primal Sutra. Us. Peace and love. Let's go.